What if the confusion you're facing is actually divine confirmation that you're on the right path? Could the closed doors and silent seasons be signs that God is more present than ever? Are you missing God's direction simply because it doesn't look the way you expected it to? What you call delay, God calls divine direction. If you've been wondering whether God is truly leading your life, let me share with you 7 powerful signs. Signs that He is not only with you, but guiding your every step. You prayed for the opportunity. You fasted for it. You believe with all your heart that it was yours, and then suddenly the door slammed shut. The job fell through. The relationship ended. The business deal collapsed. The acceptance letter never came. And all you could do was stand there confused, broken, asking, "Why, God? I thought this was you. I thought this was the path you wanted me to take." You replay the moments over and over again, trying to figure out what you missed. You wonder if you didn't pray hard enough, didn't have enough faith, or maybe, just maybe, God stopped listening. But I want to tell you something today that might just shift everything inside you. The closed door was not the end. It was the beginning. Sometimes the most loving thing God can do for you is say no. Not because He wants to withhold something from you, but because He wants to protect you from something you can't see. You see the surface, He sees the depths. You see today, He sees eternity. You see the opportunity, He sees the outcome. The truth is, not every good thing is a God thing. Not every open door is meant to be walked through. And not every yes leads to blessing. We often measure God's favor by open doors, by the things that go right. But what if favor is also found in the doors He won't let open? What if grace is in the detour? What if the closed door was the greatest act of divine mercy you've ever received? You might be crying over something God rescued you from. There's a danger in assuming that God only speaks through success. He speaks through silence. He speaks through redirection. He speaks through a door that won't budge no matter how hard you try. You can knock, push, kick, and plead. But when it doesn't open, you're faced with a choice. Fight God's hand or trust His heart. We don't like to talk about the doors that close. They feel like failure. They feel like rejection. They feel like punishment. But the Bible is full of closed doors that became launch pads for God's greatest miracles. Ask Joseph. He was thrown into a prison before he was elevated to the palace. Ask Paul. He was blocked from preaching in certain regions before he was sent to Macedonia to bring revival. Ask Jesus. He was rejected in his own hometown before his ministry changed the world. Just because a door is closed doesn't mean God isn't in it. Some of you are standing at the threshold of a door that won't open, and you're calling it a curse. But God is calling it redirection. He's not punishing you. He's positioning you. He's not denying you. He's developing you. Every time you cry over what didn't happen, He's whispering, "If only you knew what I was preparing behind the scenes." You see, when you trust God, you trust the shut doors just as much as the open ones. He doesn't close doors out of cruelty. He closes them out of care. There are people you wanted in your life that God removed because they would have delayed your destiny. There are places you wanted to go that He blocked because they weren't aligned with His plan. There are things you thought you needed that He withheld because He knew they would break you before they ever blessed you. Sometimes God will shut a door so tight that it feels like rejection, but it's really protection in disguise. And it's not always a dramatic sudden slam. Sometimes the door closes slowly, quietly, almost unnoticeably. You start losing passion for something that once excited you. The joy starts to fade. The peace begins to disappear. And if you're honest, you've been holding on to something that God already released you from. But because we hate letting go, we cling to closed doors with white knuckles, afraid that there might be nothing better on the other side. We settle for less because we fear the unknown. We try to force things to work because we don't trust the silence. But friend, God will never remove something from your life without intending to replace it with something greater. The door that closed wasn't a punishment. It was preparation, a setup, a sacred no that's leading you to a divine yes. But you won't see the promise until you stop fighting the process. Sometimes God has to close one door to give you the faith to walk through the next. He has to block the path so you don't waste time on something beneath your calling. And He'll do it without warning, without explanation, without apology, because He's not obligated to explain His plan. He's asking you to trust it. When the door closes, your heart may break, but your faith doesn't have to. You can grieve what you lost while still praising God for what's coming. You can be disappointed and still be devoted. You can weep and still worship, because every closed door carries a message. I'm not done with you. I'm not abandoning you. I'm leading you. God's guidance isn't always comfortable. It's not always clear, but it is always good. If you're standing in front of a door that's closed and you can't understand why you're not alone, you're not forgotten. You're not off course. You might just be exactly where God wants you to be. There are moments in life when nothing makes sense. Everything you counted on begins to shake. The people you leaned on grow distant. The plans you made fall apart. The doors you prayed for stay shut. And in the natural, there's every reason to panic, every reason to question, every reason to fall apart. And yet somewhere deep within you, there is peace. Not a loud peace, not a peace that comes with trumpets or explanations, but a quiet, still, sacred calm. A peace that makes no sense. A peace that tells you somehow everything is going to be all right. You didn't manufacture it. You didn't earn it. It wasn't the result of a perfect life or ideal circumstances. No, this peace came in spite of everything going wrong. It arrived when logic failed and emotions overwhelmed. It showed up when you should have been breaking down, and it didn't come from outside. It rose up from within. That peace is not human. That peace is not emotional. That peace is holy. That peace is the evidence of a God who is with you in the storm. When God is directing your life, He doesn't always remove the storm. Sometimes He simply stands with you in the middle of it, wrapping you in a stillness that defies understanding. It doesn't mean you don't feel the wind. It doesn't mean the waves stop crashing. It means the storm no longer owns you. It means fear doesn't control you. It means the peace of God is holding your mind, holding your heart, and anchoring your soul in the chaos. We spend so much time asking God to calm the waters. We want Him to stop the thunder, to quiet the waves, to remove the struggle. But sometimes God doesn't calm the storm around you because He's using it to calm the storm within you. He lets the winds howl so you can learn to rest in Him. He lets the uncertainty remain so you can finally trust what you cannot see. And when that trust begins to form, something beautiful happens. Anxiety loses its grip. Fear loosens its hold, and peace begins to rise. It's not always immediate. Sometimes it comes in pieces. Sometimes it arrives as a whisper when the world is screaming. But it comes, and when it does, it changes you. You stop measuring peace by the absence of problems and start measuring it by the presence of God. You realize that peace isn't something you chase. It's someone you know. And the closer you walk with Him, the deeper that peace becomes. It's the peace that silenced the fear in Peter when he stepped out onto the water. It's the peace that steadied Paul when he sang hymns in prison. It's the peace that comforted Jesus in Gethsemane when the weight of the world was on His shoulders. That same peace now lives in you. It doesn't always remove the pain, but it transforms your posture in the middle of it. It gives you the strength to stand when everything says you should fall. It allows you to smile through tears, to praise through pain, to hope in the dark. And this is how you begin to recognize that God is leading your life, not just by the blessings, but by the peace that refuses to let go of you. Peace becomes your compass. When you feel it, you know you're on the right path. When you lose it, it's a sign to pause, to pray, to seek, because God leads His children not only with signs and wonders, but with peace. A divine settling in the spirit that says, this is the way, walk in it. You don't have to explain this peace to anyone. You don't have to prove it or defend it. You just carry it. People will look at your life and wonder how you're still standing, how you're not bitter, how you're not broken beyond repair. And you'll know it's not you, it's Him. The world didn't give you this peace, and the world can't take it away. You may not have all the answers. You may not know how things will work out. But when God is directing your life, He doesn't just give you a plan. He gives you peace. The kind that tells you, I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know who holds me. That peace lets you walk through uncertainty with courage. It lets you face opposition with grace. It lets you live in the tension without losing your mind. And perhaps the greatest miracle is not that the storm stops, but that your soul is still, that your mind is quiet, that your heart is steady, that while everything around you rages, there is a sanctuary inside you where God dwells, a sacred place where fear can't reach and doubt cannot enter. That is the peace that surpasses all understanding. That is the peace that guards your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. This kind of peace is not found in the world. It's not something you can buy. It doesn't come through success, comfort, or control. It comes through surrender, through trusting that God's hand is on your life, even when the path is hidden, through believing that if He led you into the storm, He'll carry you through it, through knowing that His presence is enough, even if nothing else changes. When you begin to experience that peace in the midst of pain, you'll start to realize something. You're not just surviving. You're being led. You're being sustained. You're being held by something stronger than circumstance, deeper than emotion, greater than logic. And that means even in the middle of your storm, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. There's a moment in your journey with God when you start to notice that your heart doesn't chase the same things it used to. The applause doesn't sound as sweet. The spotlight doesn't shine as bright. The approval of people just doesn't satisfy the way it once did. And deep inside, there's a stirring, an ache even, not for recognition, not for validation, but for purpose, for meaning, for something eternal. And that pull is not random. It's not weakness. It's not some passing feeling. It's divine. It's sacred. It's God pulling you into alignment with why you were created. You start to feel uncomfortable trying to fit into spaces where you once belonged. You try to engage in conversations, in crowds, in pursuits that once excited you. But now they feel empty. Something feels off, like you're outgrowing the mask you once wore, the roles you once played, the identity you once clung to because you were never called to be popular. You were called to be purposeful. And the deeper God pulls you into your calling, the more you begin to feel the tension between the two. There is a cost to choosing purpose. It doesn't always look glamorous. It won't always get you followers or applause. It often looks like quiet obedience, like saying no to things that would elevate your platform but compromise your integrity. Like walking away from what everyone else is chasing because you're chasing something greater, something deeper, something eternal. You see, popularity is about being seen. Purpose is about being sent. One feeds your ego, the other feeds your soul. One demands that you perform, the other demands that you surrender. Popularity is loud and temporary. Purpose is quiet and everlasting. And when God starts directing your life, He begins to strip away your appetite for popularity, not to punish you, but to protect you from the addiction to approval. You'll start to realize that you don't want to just look successful. You want to be significant. You don't want to just be noticed. You want to make a difference. You're not interested in building a name for yourself. You want to build the kingdom of God. And that's when you know something in you has shifted. The old desires are fading. The old motives are dying because God is calling you higher. He'll start to whisper to you in the quiet moments. He'll disturb your comfort. He'll make you restless with surface-level living. You'll find yourself dreaming about something bigger than yourself, something that serves others, something that glorifies Him. You'll feel this pull toward impact, toward mission, toward legacy. It may not come with a platform. It may not be noticed by the masses, but it will matter in heaven. The world will try to pull you back. It will offer shortcuts. It will offer likes and shares and clout. It will tempt you to compromise just a little to be accepted. But when God has truly taken hold of your heart, you can't go back to performing. You can't go back to pretending. You can't go back to craving the applause of people who don't even know your name in heaven. You will feel the loneliness of purpose. It won't always be easy. People may misunderstand you. They may distance themselves from you. They may call you too serious, too spiritual, too different. But you weren't called to fit in. You were called to stand out, and standing out for the sake of Christ will cost you everything. Your pride, your comfort, your plans. But what you gain in return is worth more than the world could ever offer. Purpose is not always clear at first. It begins as a quiet invitation, a nudge, a pull that you can't shake. It's that idea that keeps you up at night, that burden that won't leave your heart, that vision that keeps burning even when nothing around you supports it. And God is the one igniting it. He's shaping you, refining you, molding you, not for popularity, but for impact. He's preparing you to do something that may never make headlines, but will make heaven rejoice. Something that may not be celebrated by the crowd, but will change lives behind the scenes. Something that may not be flashy, but will be faithful. Because faithfulness to purpose is what pleases God. Not how many people know your name, but how many lives you touch with His love. Sometimes God will hide you on purpose. He'll keep you in the background. He'll let others pass you by, not because you're forgotten, but because you're being formed. You're not being overlooked, you're being overhauled. Because when the time comes and He does release you, you won't be chasing popularity. You'll be walking in purpose with power and purity. When you feel that tug in your heart that says, I was made for more, that's not ambition. That's heaven calling you higher. That's God reminding you that your value doesn't come from visibility. It comes from His voice. And if you follow that voice, even when it leads you away from the crowd, you will find the reason you were born. The purpose of God will always be greater than the opinions of man. You may not get a standing ovation. You may not be trending, but you will be trusted by God to carry something sacred. And in the end, when it's all said and done, it won't be about how many knew your name, but whether you fulfilled the one thing you were sent to do. Because when you're truly being led by God, you won't be pulled toward popularity. You'll be pulled toward purpose again and again until the only thing you desire is to hear Him say, "Well done." There are seasons in life when people who you once believed would be by your side forever begin to fade away. You thought you'd always have them. You thought the bond was unbreakable. You believed that no matter what life threw at you, these people would be your constant. But one by one, they start to slip away. Maybe it's subtle at first. A text not returned, a call ignored, a conversation that feels different. But over time, the distance becomes undeniable, and you're left standing there wondering what happened. You ask yourself, where did it all go wrong? Why are they leaving? You can feel the void, the absence, the coldness, where once there was warmth. You may even try to chase them, to hold on tighter, to make them stay. But no matter what you do, the separation continues, and it hurts. It cuts deeper than you ever imagined, because these were the people you thought would always be there. Your friends, your family, your confidence, and now they're slipping through your fingers, and you're left to wonder if you did something wrong, if you missed a sign, if you weren't enough. But I want to tell you something that might be hard to hear, but is true nonetheless. Not everyone is meant to stay. Some people are in your life for a season, and when that season is over, they move on. It's not because you're unworthy. It's not because you failed. It's because God is doing something in you and for you that requires them to go. I know this might sound hard to understand, especially when it feels like they're walking away from you. But what if, just maybe, God is removing people to make room for what's next? What if He's clearing your path so that you can walk in the fullness of His plan for your life? You see, we often misunderstand the purpose of people in our lives. We think they're meant to stick around forever. that our relationships should be constant and unchanging. But if we're being honest, we know that sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who hold us back the most. Sometimes the relationships that once felt like support become chains keeping us from stepping into our destiny. It's not because they're bad people or because you did something wrong. It's simply because your next step requires a different set of people, a different environment, and a different season. God has a way of repositioning us when we need it most. He'll use the painful act of losing people to push us into a place of growth, of independence, of reliance on Him rather than on those around us. He'll break our dependency on human relationships so that we can fully rely on His presence, His guidance, His love. And while it's painful in the moment, it's also a sign that He's doing something new. It's a sign that you're on the verge of breakthrough. I know it's hard to let go of people you thought you'd always have. The memories, the laughter, the shared experiences, it all tugs at your heart. And when those people leave, it can feel like a part of you is leaving with them. It's normal to grieve the loss. It's okay to mourn the changes, but don't let the hurt hold you back. Don't let the fear of abandonment cause you to shrink away from the future God has for you. There's a reason God allows certain people to fade out of your life. He's preparing you for new connections, relationships that will challenge you, encourage you, and help you fulfill your purpose. He's positioning you in new spaces with new people who will see you for who you truly are and support you in the calling He's placed on your life. And that's why, even when it feels like you're losing everything, you're actually gaining something far greater. You're gaining the opportunity to grow, to rise, to step into your calling without the distractions and limitations of past relationships. But let's be clear, this doesn't mean that the people you lose were necessarily bad or toxic. It doesn't mean that they don't matter to God. Sometimes the loss is just part of the process of growth. Relationships that once felt life-giving may no longer fit the person God is calling you to become. And though it may be painful to let go, trust that God knows what's best. He will never allow you to be left without what you need to fulfill His purpose. If He's closing doors to certain relationships, it's because He has something better waiting for you. The pain of losing people is real. It can feel like betrayal, like abandonment, like being left behind. But I want you to remember this truth: God will never leave you. When everyone else walks away, He will still be there. His love will never fail you. His presence will never forsake you. And when you're standing alone, He will hold you close and whisper, "I am with you." You may feel like you've lost everything, but what you really have is a chance to find more of God, more of His peace, more of His provision, more of His plan. And when you find more of Him, you'll find that what you've lost isn't as important as what you've gained. God's purpose for your life is bigger than the people who walk away. It's bigger than the relationships that end. And while it may not feel like it right now, losing people can be the greatest gift you'll ever receive, because it's in the space they leave behind that God will fill you with new strength, new vision, and new opportunities. It's in those empty spaces that He will shape you into the person you need to be for what's coming next. So don't be afraid of the people who leave. Don't be afraid of the relationships that fade away. Know that God is using this time to teach you how to depend on Him, how to grow, and how to trust that He has something greater ahead. It may hurt now, but the pain will not last forever. In time, you will see that what seemed like loss was actually preparation for the fullness of His plan. And when the right people come, those who are meant to walk with you through the next chapter, they will be the ones who are aligned with your purpose, who will encourage you and help you become everything God has destined for you to be. So trust the process. Trust that God is directing your life, even through the painful separations. He knows what He's doing, and He will never leave you empty-handed. There's a deep, unsettling feeling that begins to rise in your spirit. It's subtle at first, almost like a whisper that you can't quite make out. You've got everything you thought you wanted: the house, the car, the job, the relationships, the security. From the outside, everything seems perfect. Everyone looks at your life and assumes you've made it. You should be content, right? But inside, there's a restlessness, a nagging feeling that you can't shake. It's as if something is stirring within you, pulling you out of your comfort zone. You should feel at peace, but instead you feel a sense of unease. You feel like there's something more. And you can't figure out why you're not satisfied with the life you've worked so hard to build. That restlessness, it's not a coincidence. It's God. It's His voice calling you beyond the comfortable, beyond the predictable, beyond the life you've constructed for yourself. You see, comfort has a way of numbing our spirits. It lulls us into a place where we stop striving, stop dreaming, stop seeking. We settle. But God never called you to settle. He never called you to be comfortable. He called you to something greater. And when you're living beneath your calling, when you're not fully walking in the purpose He has for you, your spirit will become restless. You'll feel a longing for something deeper, something more meaningful, something that taps into the very essence of who you were created to be. It's easy to mistake this restlessness for dissatisfaction or discontent. You might think that you're just ungrateful for what you have, but in reality, it's a sign that God is trying to get your attention. He's trying to lead you out of the land of comfort and into the land of purpose. Comfort is not always a blessing. It can be a trap. It can keep you from growing, from stretching, from stepping into the fullness of what God has for you. When you get too comfortable, you stop moving forward. You stop chasing dreams. You stop seeking God with the same intensity you once did. And that's when the restlessness begins. It's a gentle nudge, a whisper in your spirit saying, there's more. God didn't create you to live a life of passive comfort. He didn't create you to settle for mediocrity. You were made to move mountains. You were made to change the world. You were made to accomplish things that are far beyond your own ability, far beyond your current circumstances. But that requires stepping out of your comfort zone. It requires shaking off the complacency that keeps you locked in place. It requires embracing discomfort, uncertainty, and sometimes even fear. And yes, it requires trusting that God will equip you for the journey even when you don't know the full path ahead. When your spirit becomes restless, it's often a sign that God is pushing you to grow. He's stirring something in you that needs to be awakened. He's showing you that there's more to life than just existing. He's calling you to take risks, to step out in faith, to do something that scares you. And while it's uncomfortable, while it's scary, it's also the place where transformation happens. It's the place where you begin to understand the depths of God's plan for your life. Think about the people in the Bible who were called out of their comfort zones. Abraham was living a life of peace and security when God called him to leave everything behind and go to an unknown land. Moses was comfortable in his position in Egypt when God called him to lead the Israelites out of slavery. David was tending sheep when God called him to be king. Each of them had a comfortable life, a predictable life. But God didn't let them stay there. He stirred something in them, something that pushed them out of their comfort and into their calling. And each of them had to make a choice. Stay where they were or step out in faith and embrace the unknown. You might not be facing the same dramatic calls as these biblical figures, but the principle is the same. God is calling you to something more. He's calling you to move beyond the life you've built and into the life He's designed for you. And when you start to feel that restlessness, that yearning for something more, it's an invitation to trust Him in new ways. It's an invitation to step into the unknown, to take risks, to move past the comfort that's holding you back. It's an invitation to live the life that you were always meant to live. But let's be clear, stepping out of your comfort zone isn't easy. It requires courage. It requires trust. It requires you to let go of the control you've clung to so tightly. It means saying yes to the unknown, to the things that scare you, to the things that require faith. And while that may feel overwhelming, it's also liberating because when you trust God and step out in faith, you discover that He will always provide what you need. You discover that He is faithful, that He will guide you through the unknown, and that the journey, though difficult, will always lead you to greater growth and greater purpose. Your spirit is restless because God is calling you to move forward. He's calling you to let go of the comfortable life that has kept you stagnant and embrace the adventurous life He has planned for you. He's calling you to break free from the fear and uncertainty that hold you back and step into a future filled with possibilities. You won't find peace in your comfort. You won't find fulfillment in staying where you are. But when you step out, in faith, when you follow God's call and embrace the unknown, you will discover a peace that surpasses understanding, a peace that comes from knowing you are exactly where God wants you to be. So if you feel restless in your comfort, don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it. Embrace it. It's God's invitation to step into something greater. It's His call to leave behind the life you've known and follow Him into the unknown. It's time to trust Him with your future and step out in faith. Because on the other side of your comfort zone is the life you were always meant to live, and it's waiting for you. Have you ever experienced a moment in your life when you were struggling with a decision or even with understanding where God was leading you, and then seemingly out of nowhere you start receiving confirmations from every direction? It's almost like the world around you begins to align with the very thing you've been praying for, seeking, or hoping for. You hear a sermon, a song, or someone's testimony, and it feels as though those words were meant just for you. You read a passage in the Bible, and it jumps off the page, speaking directly to your situation. You meet a stranger who says something that resonates with your heart, or a friend reaches out at just the right time with the exact words you needed to hear. At first, you might brush it off as coincidence, but as the confirmations keep coming, repeatedly from all directions, you start to wonder, could this be God? Could He be trying to tell you something? And deep down, you know the answer. Yes, this is God. He's speaking to you. He's making it clear. And it's not just a one-time thing. It's like the floodgates have opened, and everywhere you turn, there's another confirmation, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Suddenly, you're not so confused anymore. Suddenly, the path ahead feels clearer. Suddenly, you're filled with the peace that comes from knowing that God is in control. The thing about confirmations is that they don't always come in ways you expect. Sometimes they come in a still, small voice gently nudging your spirit. Other times, they come through dramatic moments, an unexpected event, a divine appointment, or a breakthrough that feels too perfectly timed to be anything other than God's hand at work. God has a way of confirming His will in ways that speak to you personally, in ways that align with who you are, with what you've been praying for, and with what you've been seeking. And when those confirmations come, they carry a power to build your faith, to stir your spirit, and to bring you into alignment with His purpose for your life. One of the most powerful aspects of receiving confirmations is the peace they bring. When you're uncertain about your next steps, the enemy will often come in with doubt, fear, and confusion, trying to convince you that you're on the wrong path, or that you're missing God's will. But when God begins to confirm His plan for you, there's a peace that settles over your heart. It's like a weight lifts off your shoulders. You may not know all the details. You may not understand the full picture, but you know without a doubt that God is leading you. That peace is not based on your circumstances. It's based on the truth that God is with you, that He's guiding you, and that He's going to make a way even when you can't see it yet. It's in these moments that your trust in God deepens. When you see the evidence of His presence in your life, when you experience His faithfulness firsthand, it becomes easier to believe that He is working all things together for your good. The confirmations you receive become stepping stones, showing you the way forward, encouraging you to take the next step in faith. You begin to see that God is always speaking, always guiding, always making a way for you. Sometimes we're just too distracted, too busy, or too caught up in our own plans to recognize His voice. But when we slow down, when we listen, when we Seek his direction, he makes himself known. And it's not just the big things that God confirms. Sometimes he speaks to you in the details. You might be praying about something seemingly small, like a decision at work, a choice about a relationship, or even something personal, like a new habit you're trying to develop. And then out of nowhere, someone mentions something that gives you clarity. Maybe you hear a podcast or read a quote that resonates so deeply with your heart that you can't ignore it. Maybe a song comes on the radio with lyrics that seem to speak directly to the situation you're facing. These little confirmations are just as powerful as the big ones because they show that God is concerned with every area of your life, not just the major decisions. And as the confirmations come, they start to build your faith. They remind you that God is always at work, even when you don't see it. They strengthen your belief that he is trustworthy and faithful, even in times of uncertainty. As you continue to receive these confirmations, your doubts begin to fade. Your fears begin to dissipate. The confusion starts to clear. You realize that God has been guiding you all along, and you start to walk forward with renewed confidence. It's not that the challenges ahead disappear, but rather that you now have the assurance that God is with you every step of the way. 1. Of the most beautiful things about receiving confirmations is how personal they are. God knows your heart. He knows your fears, your hopes, your dreams, and your struggles. He knows the exact language you speak. He knows what will get your attention. And when he confirms his will for you, he does it in a way that speaks directly to you, in a way that resonates deeply within your soul. It's not just some general message. It's a specific tailored word that brings clarity and peace to your unique situation. There's a deep sense of encouragement that comes when you realize that God is actively involved in your life. It's easy to feel isolated or uncertain, especially when life throws challenges your way. But when those confirmations come, when you hear from God through his word, through others, or through circumstances, it's like he's reminding you that he's always near. He's never left you. He's never forgotten about you. And he is always, always speaking. The more you recognize these confirmations, the more you begin to expect them. You begin to anticipate that God is going to show up in powerful ways, confirming his plans for you. And you realize that God's guidance isn't a one-time thing. It's a continuous ongoing process. He will continue to lead you, continue to show you the way forward, continue to remind you of his promises, and continue to confirm his will in your life. All you have to do is be attentive, be open, and trust that he is with you, guiding you every step of the way. When you see confirmations coming from every direction, don't ignore them. Don't take them for granted. Recognize them as the loving hand of God directing your steps, encouraging your heart, and reassuring you that you are on the right path. These confirmations are not just random. They are the evidence of God's faithfulness in your life, and they are meant to build your faith and carry you forward into the future he has planned for you. So, when you start receiving confirmations from everywhere, take a moment to thank God for his guidance, for his presence, and for his faithfulness, because he is making his will known to you, and he is always, always at work on your behalf. There comes a point in every journey where you find yourself completely out of strength, completely out of answers, and completely out of options. You've tried everything. You've done all that you can. You've worked hard, prayed hard, and hoped even harder. But despite all your efforts, nothing seems to be working. In fact, it feels like you're getting further away from the solution, further away from the breakthrough you've been praying for. It's in these moments that you feel like you've reached the end of yourself. You've reached the limit of your own power, your own understanding, and your own ability to fix things. And in that space, you feel vulnerable, defeated, and empty. The weight of your struggles feels heavier than ever. The dream you once chased so passionately now seems unreachable, and the hopes you clung to seem to slip further away with every passing day. It's easy to feel hopeless in these moments, like all is lost. But here's the truth. Reaching the end of yourself isn't the end. It's the beginning of something new. When you come to the end of your own strength, When you've exhausted every possibility within your control, that's when God can step in. That's when He can do what only He can do. You see, God allows us to reach the end of ourselves so that we can finally recognize our need for Him. He allows us to come to the point where we can no longer rely on our own abilities so that we can learn to depend on Him, to trust in His strength, and to surrender fully to His plan. It's in these moments of weakness that God's power is most evident. It's when we feel we have nothing left to give that His grace becomes most apparent. The Apostle Paul writes in 2 Corinthians 12:9, "But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me.'" When you've been brought to the end of yourself, it's not a sign of failure. It's an opportunity for God's strength to be revealed in your life in ways you've never experienced before. Your weakness becomes the perfect backdrop for His greatness to shine. But in order to experience that, you must first be willing to admit that you've reached the end of yourself. You have to acknowledge that on your own. You cannot do it. You cannot fix it. You cannot control it. And it's okay to admit that. In fact, it's the first step toward freedom. When you stop trying to hold everything together, when you stop pretending that you have it all figured out, you make room for God to step in and take over. The truth is, sometimes God has to bring us to the point of surrender before we can receive what He has for us. He has to strip away the pride, the self-reliance, the desire to control every outcome so that we can receive His grace and His help. He wants us to get to the place where we realize we are not in charge, and we cannot do this alone. It's in those moments of desperation when you feel the most helpless that God is working behind the scenes in ways you can't yet see. Even when everything around you feels chaotic, even when it seems like the situation is beyond repair, God is moving. His plans are still in motion. His timing is still perfect. He's not finished with you yet. He hasn't forgotten about you. And though you may feel like you've hit rock bottom, it's actually the perfect place for God to lift you up. His power is made perfect in your weakness. His provision is made clear in your need. The thing is, we often resist the process of coming to the end of ourselves because it feels uncomfortable. It feels humbling. It feels like failure. We don't like the idea of being vulnerable or admitting that we don't have all the answers. But the beauty of surrendering is that it opens the door to God's miraculous intervention. God can't move in our lives until we relinquish control. He can't pour into us until we're empty of our own attempts to fix things. The act of coming to the end of yourself is a divine reset. It's a spiritual moment of emptying so that God can fill you with His strength, His wisdom, and His peace. When you're at the end of yourself, it can feel like you're standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure of what comes next. But it's also a place of incredible potential. Because when you're no longer holding on to your own plans, your own ideas, your own expectations, you create space for God to show you something new, something bigger, something beyond your wildest dreams. It's in these moments of complete surrender that God can reveal His true purpose for your life. He can take what seems broken and use it for His glory. He can take your pain and turn it into something beautiful. He can take your mess and make a masterpiece. But first, you have to let go. The Bible is full of stories of people who came to the end of themselves and saw God do miraculous things. Think of Moses standing at the Red Sea with nowhere to go and an entire army chasing him. He had nothing left. But it was in that moment, when he had no plan, no escape route, that God parted the sea and made a way where there was no way. Think of Hannah, who prayed for years for a child and came to the end of herself so desperate that she poured out her soul to God. It was then that God answered her prayer and gave her Samuel, a prophet who would change the course of Israel's history. Think of Jesus, who in the Garden of Gethsemane came to the end of himself, praying, "Not my will, but yours be done." It was in his moment of surrender that he fulfilled the ultimate purpose for which he was sent. When you reach the end of yourself, You are in the perfect place for God to show up in ways that you could never have imagined. He doesn't need you to be strong. He needs you to be surrendered. He doesn't need you to have all the answers. He needs you to trust in His guidance. And when you do that, when you let go and allow God to take the reins, you will experience His power in ways that will leave you in awe. The end of yourself is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of the chapter where God does the impossible. So if you're feeling like you've come to the end of your strength, don't despair. You're right where God needs you to be. Let Him take over and watch as He does what only He can do. When we reach the end of ourselves, it's not a place of defeat. It's a divine opportunity. It's a moment when God's power can shine through our weaknesses and guide us towards something far greater than we could ever imagine on our own. When we find ourselves completely empty, God is ready to fill us with His strength, His grace, and His purpose. It's in surrender that we truly experience His miraculous intervention and begin to walk in the fullness of His plan for our lives. At the end of ourselves, we make room for God to move, to lead, and to do what only He can do. The struggles we face, the brokenness we experience, and the pain we endure are not wasted. They become the soil in which God's greatest work is cultivated. In those moments of desperation, we are reminded that we are not alone, that God is with us every step of the way, lifting us up when we can't stand, showing us the way when we can't see, and giving us strength when we are weak. Thank you for listening to this message today. I pray that no matter where you are in your journey, you'll embrace the end of yourself as the starting point for God's perfect plan. Trust Him, surrender to Him, and watch as He turns your weakness into His strength. God bless you all, and may you feel His presence in every step you